Hey, so I'm Ram. I'm a business investor, and we have an excellent panel also here. So why don't we start with some introductions? You could start in the order.
Momir here from IOSG Ventures. So IOSG Ventures is a crypto VC firm operating since 2017. I joined the firm in 2020, early on mostly focused on DeFi research and investment. Since 2021 had more interest for infrastructure. Recently spent also a lot of time looking into crypto and AI intersection. Thanks to OpenLedger for organizing and for inviting.
My name is Jay Brookman. I'm the founder and CEO of Coin Fund. We've been a crypto-focused investment firm since 2015, doing a lot of research and investment into, blockchain, deep tech, and infrastructure, and most recently spent a lot of time in decentralized AI.
We've been around since 2018. Global
I'm Suji, founder of Mass Network. I actually pitched all you guys back in the days, so it's a long story. So Mass started 2016. Josie, by the way, that's we meet all random places, Denver, like fried rice near the street. Mass is one of the early social protocol, and one thing we realized is this decentralized data, decentralized AI is too huge. That's not going to be complete by one project. So that's why we actually launched a venture arm like you guys in 2022. So I actually have like two suits. One is a developer, engineer, founder. Another is investing, helping, granting other people. So that's what we do.
Thanks for that. Let me probably answer one of the questions. So, we've seen a lot of investment that has been going on in the compute for the last 1 year. Projects were short, funded, and they're launched as well. Where do you think the market is going? What industry into compute? The areas that is coming in?
I feel the title of the panel implies that as if a compute problem has been solved. I think that the projects that have been very aggressive in marketing and token launch still haven't resolved many of the compute problems. Like now projects that are live are mostly GPU marketplaces, but I think at the compute layer there are several other interesting. Is it better?
Guys, can you hear him? Can you guys hear him?
Hello. But at the compute layer, I think there are several other interesting problems to be addressed. I think one of them is how to make non-uniform GPUs interoperable in a network. The other one is whether there is a potential in utilizing some of the consumer-grade GPUs. And then obviously whether we talk about training or inference, it's a very different problem set. So I think on the inference side of things, we are going to have shorter product cycles because the tech stack is a little bit more mature, whereas on the training side of things, I think there is still a relatively long roadmap to get these products to function as a proper network that can offer like good services. But beyond compute, I think there are other interesting areas. We made our investment in the AI agent space. In 2022, we led a seed round for Theoric AI. They are building layers for AI agents to communicate with each other, to find out each other, and to enable this AI agent interoperability. So I'm quite excited about that. And I can talk a lot about data. I'm not sure whether we have time for it in the first question, but I think data is often overlooked.
More questions around data, so I think you can say it for that. But
Yeah.
if you want to add something, please go ahead.
I think just to be short, like data is often overlooked. Everybody talks about compute, but data is the one of the two key resources, right? Like first processing power, and the second is data, right? So I think there are ways where crypto, not just for crypto incentives and coordination mechanism, but we can also see like that some of these crypto approaches have better unit economics than what could be done with data center approach. I can talk about that maybe a little bit later.
I think most of kind of decentralized compute has been focused on, this idea of unbottlenecking. You guys hear me? Hello, hello. Oh, there. But I was saying, like, I think most of the kind of theses formed around decentralized compute networks have been about unbottlenecking the availability of, essentially high-end GPU hardware. But I think that's a pretty short-term thesis. I think we're pretty overinvested in compute. I think compute's going to be pretty cheap. I also think that a lot of the AI functions will migrate to like heterogeneous commodity hardware at some point pretty soon. So the much more interesting question to ask is like, what are people building on top of the compute that they have aggregated in Web3? And the answer is, I think we're going to pretty much cover it, but it's basically training, inference, and data, and like prioritization of all of those things. I have been very focused on training and much less focused on inference, which we can talk about.
Hello? Okay. Yeah, I think there has been a lot of commoditization in compute, especially given that supply bottlenecks have greatly eased over the last 12 months. I think right now we probably are looking at a lot more on the bottlenecks. Feeling a lot more bullish on the data side. Curious to see how decentralization might help with getting more of the valuable data on chain. I think just the word data actually involves a lot of different types of data for which many people might misunderstand how valuable individual data is. And crypto obviously has a lot of civil attacks that we're very wary of, and think verification is super important. So very curious to see whether decentralization could help with getting a lot more detailed value data notably with regard to more domain expertise. On the inference side, I think we are a lot more bullish. We do think that there is a need for more privacy, especially on a local device. So we need an investment into a company called Exo Labs as well, in which we're able to run AI clusters on our everyday devices. I think we are still looking to see if decentralized trading makes sense from a demand standpoint. I think by now we know that most users do not really care about decentralization as a ethos, and they're looking more for performance and lower cost. So that's one area that we're keeping an eye on as well. Agents is obviously one area wherein, it's heavily talked about in Web 2. And I think there are a lot of interesting use cases that are coming up in the Web 2 space. In the Web 3, it seems like a category that is very early. A lot of new use cases that are coming up, and nevertheless still on the smaller end. So kind of cautiously optimistic there as well.
Yeah, so we have several arms. Like our dev shop, our venture arm, our non-profit arm. So I'll be very frankly, I view things differently depending on the decision I'm in. Like if I'm saying, hey, okay, we have a treasury, we have a venture arm, we have some LP money, I'll buy all AI coins. It's still good. Some other investment, for example, like RS3, AGI, honestly, they were not doing AI back in the days. But somehow one day, like one guy told me, even a big stakeholder from guy say, hey, RSS is AI. I'm like, oh, how RSS is AI? Like, oh, I know like Sam Altman was close to Reddit, and the Reddit co-founder was the inventor of RSS. So that is how this is AI. And the coin pump trying to finance in a few weeks. We make money, great. But as engineer and developers, when we have two options out there for our product, one is AWS, one is decentralized AI, and then AWS guy always offer us free credit. Say, hey, you guys have a big ecosystem, and I will be like $1 million free credit on AWS. We always use AWS, frankly speaking. Unless there's something that really depends on depends on the local law, like some user in Europe, whatever, we don't want to move the data out. We have a lot of social data. We say maybe we just use decentralized AI to protect some of these things. But we also want to, like, I also frankly want to point out the elephant in the room. Before I entered crypto, I was in journalism, I was writing geopolitics, and I was doing AI myself. Extension of computing power is a huge push to decentralize computing and AI. It is very important, but very few people frankly talk about it. I'd say if we continue this trend without really understanding who's using these AI infra, decentralized AI infra, it will be something the outcome will be very similar to Canadian Cash. Hopefully it's not going to be that way, but like, honestly, if we can't get AWS graphic card and we can't get 800, H100 China or Russia and other places, I'll try like the decentralized AI. It's going to be still like North Korean try these days. So I wear different hats depends on situation and definitely we should invest a lot in these things. But as developer, as engineer, and as we run some nonprofit, we do have a lot of concern what's going on.
Thank you for that. And Momo, you asked a question about data, so that's what I'm going to get next. So I had this discussion with a couple of founders from Web2 AI space, and they always quote this thing about pipeline, right? So she's a visionary in AI. She spoke about how data powers AI, but we should also empower the people who provide the data, right? So what do you guys think about data attribution? Giving back to data contributors. It could be a business or an SME or an user who's contributing data. What do you think about attributing back to them based on like these models?
I think it's an interesting idea. I think when we look into the data segment, especially in the crypto and AI intersection, there are two main categories. One is about enabling easier and cheaper access to public data, and then the second category is about unlocking the data that hasn't been used so far. And I think when we talk about the second category, I think Cheryl touched on that a few moments ago. Essentially, the two kind of alternative sources of data that hasn't been tapped so far is user-owned data, and some of them. The second one, I believe, is the enterprise-owned data. For enterprises, there is a lot of unstructured data that could be very useful for training AI models. However, it's either could contain some sensitive business information, which would be like the business reason for not sharing this, or because of the regulations, they're not able to share this user data with to monetize it by selling it to third parties. So at the end of the day, like a lot of the data ownership lies with the users themselves, and I think. I listened to a presentation from Anna from Vena Labs. She mentioned that, for instance, hypothetically speaking, if 100 million social media users contribute their social media data, we would have, by the order of magnitude, more data than what has been used to train the state-of-the-art models so far. So I think that's all showcasing the power of creating these sort of data vaults where you have like this direct data attribution and some sort of like shared ownership according to the quality of contribution, right? That's the first category. The second category is the open data and unit economics. But if you have time later on, I can talk about that.
Well, I think in like centralized training or just training broadly, there's definitely a conversation about whether content creators should be compensated for their data. I don't think it's necessarily like a straightforward conversation or something that has like an obvious answer. But well, one thing that is just a fact is that kind of big tech companies have been pretty aggressive in terms of just taking the data. There's also been a court case recently that got adjudicated in the U.S. to the effect that like if data is out there in public and people can read it and Google can index it and it's sort of available and the content creators have made it available, then it's sort of fair game to be part of a data set that's training an AI model. There's also a lawsuit going on between like the New York Times and OpenAI on similar topics. So I guess we'll kind of see. in decentralized training, I think it's less of a important topic today because the models that we can train are smaller, and there are a number of open data sets that could get us to pretty large models already. And so it's not currently like a bottleneck for decentralized training.
Yeah, not sure I have too much more to add. I think, and I agree with you, if we can compensate people for the data, we should. But I think it is, the jury's still out on, sorry?
But can we?
Yeah, exactly. The jury's out on whether we can do it in a accurate and just manner. I think a lot of the verification and scoring algorithms out there are still preliminary, but nevertheless, people are doing a lot of good work on that. So I definitely agree with the call out on Vanna Labs, in which she's really working with a lot of data DAOs and really spreading the ecosystem such that each of them are kind of trying out a new approach. Some of them are using. Hello? Okay. Some are using TDE, some are using TLS. So I think it's an ongoing piece of research, but the question is really how do we do this rather than should we do this?
Just to jump in here, I think there is no data ownership without data privacy. So I think this is why it's also important to have these data vaults operate in a privacy-preserving manner. And to shield one of Jake's portfolio, I think Bagel is one of the examples of the companies that is working to solve this problem, along with Vanna, Sahara, and few others. But essentially, this is where privacy cryptography also becomes important.
A very practical example will be recently there's several browser extension style app that's giving people data. Koi KYI, which we're investor. We didn't invest, but I think we do have some point somewhere. Maybe it's not have the traffic box on from the market. The question will be like, okay, like even like okay, graphs, like it's great, like 2 billion maybe. Like okay, 2 billion you give out 10% for airdrop for people's data, right? That's like 100 million, maybe 100 million, 150 million. Is that enough to buy out enough users' data? To feel it's significant amount that I will give out saying like GDPR or CDPA for that data? It turns out it is not, right? Because even at what point, if we look into the geographics, it's mostly African, Southeast Asian users wanting to scan their eyeballs to just give eyebrow jobs. So the fact is, if the user is rich, living in relatively developed countries, you need to give them a really good airdrops for uploading their data or have some more trust. You need to say, approve this is AP approved, it's FHE, whatever, like fancy words, have about PhD and professors, approve this is okay. And then to give a lot of tokens to lure them for the data, right? But it's not enough. Advertisement industry annually or even monthly have billions of transactions. But the best token you can launch is just few billion FTP. It's not enough to attract users who constantly provide data to exchange of the tokens. And the only group of users you're gonna attract is gonna be extremely similar to blockchain geographics. Right? It'll be a lot of African people's users, Southeast Asian users, data, and you're not gonna have positive cash flow. Because people is like not going to these data or train these data on some reasons. And then it will just go down. You need to launch a new token. So that's going to be a bad. Yeah.
That's right. I just wanted to disagree on one point. You were saying about like, no, we should reward people with tokens to contribute data. But I see that as just as an incentive mechanism to encourage them to come forward and provide data. But it's up to the owners, to the model builders, and the GenAI apps who are using this data to actually attribute back to them. So, what's your thoughts on that? That's where, actually, for example, OpenAI is even Jake was there, right?
That's the only possible way I think right now. Just give out airdrop for one time. It's not even working. Yep.
I just want to point out that like no strategy where like users have to opt in to data will be more effective at collecting data than simply stealing everyone's data, right? So like, it might be a non-starter if the true purpose is to collect and maximize the amount of data to build the biggest, most, intelligent model. In fact, it might not be possible to do that through an incentive mechanism.
So
I think that,
I do not believe in terms of like that only user-owned data is going to solve all the problem. There is a lot of proprietary data that we not
Right,
develop into.
right.
So and one of the reasons I don't see that happening is because there is no platform today for proprietary data to monetize itself, right? So if you go ahead and take a look at Hugging Face and all that, it's not junk data. It's true there is like five
There's marketplace, not a dark web. There's no legit marketplace. So there's transfer data cross-border, right?
That's a really good point. Like presumably, like the big models have trained on like all public data, right? So I'm just saying, in that dimension, no incentive mechanism will collect more public data, I think, than just taking all the public data. In the private dimension, that's a different story. So like, are we clear? Like, is there more public data or more private data? I don't know. Does anyone have an answer to that question in this room? Like, I'm not.
I think
totally
that
sure.
Susie's logic flow is actually good, but there is actually one error, factual error. Grass is actually not about user-owned data. It is resolving different problems. So with Grass, essentially, to give a little bit of introduction, like if you look into the supply chain of the hardware for AI, it's actually extremely specialized. Like you have like very niche verticals that are each worth multiple billions, if not trillions, right? But then when it comes to model building, there is still not like a large, we still don't have like a large amount of specialization. So for instance, data processing is still like 80% of time consumed by an average AI startup, and part of the data processing is data scraping, right? And for instance, you have Anthropic, you have Google, you have OpenAI. They are all repetitively performing the same task of scraping the data. Like you had like a lot of reports from web publishers complaining, oh, Anthropic is spamming my website, like I cannot operate, like, and then like each of them independently doing the same task. So what Grass came up with is essentially data scraping network. And I think it's a very smart way because it's a simple way to connect to the network and you provide meaningful resource that from a unit economics makes much more sense than what the centralized data center could offer. Why is that so? If you are individual provider on Grass, you basically download the software in 3 minutes. After that, your additional cost is not large. So you basically just need to pay for the internet data package that you are anyways paying, and you have to use your computer as you are using it anyways. And in the background, Grass is scraping data, and now like they're scraping 60 terabytes of data daily, which is massive, right? Like so, it's not about user-owned data, but about like actually specializing the data workflow for building large language models, and I think they're doing it in a very smart way.
I just wanted to kind of also add on to Jake's point. There's like so much data out there in the world, less than 1% of it is really scrapable in the public realm. So actually, there's a lot of valuable data that requires a login. And actually, if you look at what Grass is doing, for example, if you try running a script on your own just to infinitely scroll Twitter, within like less than 2 minutes, you will probably come into an error. So a lot of it is actually behind a lot of these walls, which, a lot of these enterprises really, there's probably no incentive to really give up that data because they're trying to run their own models based on that kind of data. So it's kind of interesting how we are trying to tackle that as an industry. Some people have turned to synthetic data, for example. So Julia, for example, works really hard into synthetic data generation. Obviously, there are a lot of issues there in terms of how do you control things like hallucination, how do you put in place the right guardrails. But just wanted to add on.
Synthetic data has been proven to be not super useful for AI training, so it's also not the way of solving. And for Grass, they cannot access Twitter data because it requires authorization, so it is like another problem. They can only do public data scraping.
So, Mohammed, I agree on that synthetic data is not so useful, but on the other side, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? And if you take a look at synthetic data, it's all about the prompt that you give that data to generate synthetic data. if your prompts are right and if you have the right kind of seed data, you will have really valuable synthetic data. And we've seen that happen with the current model with Meta and all that. It's entirely was 90% of it was trained on synthetic data because the prompt is so good. So I guess it ends up on how do you generate that synthetic data, which makes it useful. But if it's garbage content that's given to it, then it's gonna garbage synthetic data. So yeah, I agree with that, and I also disagree on certain points.
I disagree that synthetic data is not useful. It's just useful in a like certain specific way. Like for example, when you think about LLMs telling you about like how they arrived at an answer, that could be an important aspect of what you're asking them to do. But most of the content online doesn't tell you how they arrived at the answer, right? So the role of synthetic data there might be to actually use LLMs to like take an answer and create a training set which describes the steps of how people arrive there. So I don't think like synthetic data like just replaces data. I mean, like you need data, but it helps to structure it in a way that could actually be like really useful and make the AI perform better. But I think I agree with everyone that at the end of the day, like we just need kind of high fidelity data, and that's probably going to come from proprietary data.
So I'll say a false start. Very fun. I can't disclose one. One day, a guy from Twitter DM one of our team members say, "Can you send us the most updated Twitter API to us?" They actually don't have it. So they lost their most updated API access themselves, which is true. I think this happened for 80% of big tech companies. There's always some hacky on the official API they actually create themselves. Like 20 years ago, it's still working, and then they don't have a document for that. They don't really have access to some like actual very interesting data in their database on the clouds of shitcode. I think it's weird to say, okay, this is not useful. They don't really. They're like ancient Egyptian pyramids. There's a bunch of Twitter codes or Facebook code there. And incentivization in the right way can trigger these things, but in the wrong way, just entertainment is still there. It's not even working. So it's very fun. They don't really have these data themselves. There's sort them away somehow somewhere.
On the synthetic data part, just to add, I'll share the reference of the recent research that suggests that for training purposes it hasn't been super useful, but I leave the possibility that I might be wrong.
Yeah, I agree to that. As like Jake also said, like I agree and disagree on certain points. That it's all about how you generate the data. Synthetic data as it is not useful. What are the methods that you want to use to generate synthetic data?
Well, also like
It's like putting gaps, right? You can use it for augmenting the existing data set that is there. You can use it for like masking the proprietary data that is there. So it's all about how you use it and how you fill in the gaps.
I think that's the different thing. Now you're talking about differential privacy. Like if you refer to
That's
that as
one part of synthetic data. The other part is
Right.
like augmenting that, right? Taking like very small data sets and like creating.
I'm talking about synthetic data precisely about like only training. I'm not talking about differential privacy. I'm talking about like synthetic data as kind of a hope that this can resolve a data vault problem. And for this part, I think
no, I agree with you there. I don't think synthetic data resolves like data bottlenecks to the extent that they exist. But like you talked a bunch about like grass or like data scraping, right? Like the next step to data scraping is data cleaning, and so the efficient way of doing that is through running it through an LLM, and so you're essentially like your clean data set is essentially synthetic, right? And that's used to train, but it doesn't replace
Using it for testing the model.
it doesn't replace like the information that is like needed to train, that is inherent in like the core data, right?
again depends on what definition of synthetic data you're
I agree.
talking. I didn't refer to data cleaning process.
I think we all agree to each other for most of the part. Awesome. So, I always, discuss this with a couple of others in that field. that decentralization is not a tech problem, it's a mindset, right? So how much decentralization is really AI needs, right? Is it about the data part or like very specific in terms of like, let's say you want to do decentralized inference because you're going to have the inference as an input to a contract, so you need decentralization. So where do you think decentralization is important for AI? I'll get your guys' thoughts on that.
I think that when we talk about connecting smart contracts and crypto applications with AI inference, that's when it matters, right? Like if you want to connect so essentially there is not much that you can do with smart contract. There are like certain limitations. These are very static kind of features that you can integrate. So if you want to do more things, you have to integrate some sort of external compute. I think verifiable inference for AI is just like one of these examples, right? Like if you want to offer more degrees of freedom to smart contract developers to build like more advanced features and better, more optimized applications, you have to somehow find a way of introducing external compute in a verifiable way to the smart contracts. Otherwise, you kill the purpose of having the smart contracts on blockchain, right? Like if you're just going to call centralized API to get the inference. I think there, like beyond this, obviously some other ideological kind of debate. I think for AI agents, like what True Terminal is doing, it's a centralized crypto bot that is it's a centralized AI agent that is interacting with crypto to be kind of to some extent permissionless in terms of what it can do, and like doesn't have like strict boundaries in terms of what it can achieve. I think we could have like a proper AI agent infrastructure where you don't have to rely on a True Terminal developer to manage these sort of wallets, Bitcoin wallets, and so on, but let agents fully run on-chain. It's also risky and maybe dangerous for some, in some scenarios, but I think it also opens up new opportunities, and it's not something that Apple Pay and ChatGPT are going to coordinate to work together on, because it's a lot of business and legal risk for them.
My mental model on this is like pretty simple. Decentralization is needed in the AI, pipeline context to the extent that you want to build AI using networks that are like public goods, that are open, global, possibly like censorship resistant. There's many different areas where we've tried to do this, like, should social media be open, public, global, and censorship resistant? Well, actually, maybe it should be, because we've seen, we're living through a time where governments have like meddled with media. But I would say that like in the AI space, that space is more in danger of being meddled with in like social media space. So I think it's a good thesis for, creating networks that are like credibly neutral when it comes to making AI.
I agree with that. I do, however, think that today it's unclear whether people really demand that. Like, for example, looking at something like Truth Terminal, I don't think anyone really cares about proof of AI today yet. You can say that, okay, you know what, we have the pet rock, obviously Flashbots did TDE for that. I think we're still at a very early stage of the market when we're still trying to prove out product market fit for where people are.
Can I respond? Well, you've taken a very like consumer-centric lens, though, right? So like, if I'm a scientist who wants to innovate on AI, I can't. So I actually do want that a lot, right? If I'm a consumer, I don't really care if my AI is private or verifiable or whatever. But if I'm a scientist who wants to compete with OpenAI, how am I going to do that without like joining Google or joining Facebook or going to a decentralized network and crowdfunding like $60 million worth of compute, to try different models? So my lens, what I'm saying is like my lens is developer-centric.
100%. From a developer standpoint, I completely agree that we do need to break up this monopoly that all of the big tech giants are doing. And it's really, really important for us to have monetizable open source project development out there. absolutely crucial for AI development. So from a developer standpoint, totally agree.
If for nothing else, I think that proof of, let's say, inference would matter for pumping up the gold price, because people wouldn't have to worry about whether this is actually AI or is it a developer writing his own ideas. So there was actual concern at one point whether gold is actually AI or is developer writing bullshit, because there was like some typo or want to say something?
I just want to add one thing. So there was concerns about 2 years back when ChatGPT was launched. Was it actually an AI or was like humans sitting in Philippines, Vietnam, India, like shutting out answers? So yeah, so people always have those concerns.
But yeah, so it seems that now people also care about proving that this is actually agent that you're interacting with, at least for this speculative use case. But I think for decentralized training and this sort of, I think the promise is that with sort of open network approach, for instance, if you really have like resolve these like heavy technical problems and you have like network where anybody can contribute resource, you should eventually end up with a cheaper cost, right? But the concern is that the speed would, it would be very hard for decentralized networks to compete in terms of the speed. And at least currently and in the next 12 to 18 months, the AI market cares about speed more than about cost. Everybody is paying premium to be the 3 months in advance compared to the competitors to be the first to publish state-of-the-art models. So the emphasis on the cost still didn't happen, but I think for academia, for what Jake mentioned, this would actually lower the barrier and let other institutions, instead of big tech, also test other models, right? Like who says that neural networks and a backprop is actually the best way to build AI? It's just like the beginning. So there are other alternatives, there are other ideas that cannot be tested with because the resources are too expensive, right?
Yeah, I would say the ultimate reason we want to tell the difference between us, human beings on money, or bots or AI, whether it's like ChatGPT or whatever it is, like we still on that, we still treat them differently. We still treat like people online and bots like very different, right? You say, hey, okay, if there's a social network, like 99% of social network will use it was a bots. That's the VC will say, no, this is not valuable. We did invest in a project called Triple.ai. It's only allow bots to interact to tweets. So it's hard to raising because people don't think that data is valuable. But in the end of the day, in 200 years, or let's say 100 years, we will give I will give AI human rights. That's, I think, or we become like cyber. We're gonna have some chips in the brain or whatever. If it's not the truth, it is not the future in 200 years, we're probably fine. Okay? If that's the future, we're gonna gradually gonna have like AI boyfriends, girlfriends, like wife, daddy, whatever, sugar daddy, AI boss, in the next like decades, 20 decades, 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, doesn't matter. You know, and again, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, there's still colonization in the world, and now if you ask the kids like what is colonization, like oh, it's almost end. It's like historical book, right? So I think we in the long run we are. I'm not super optimistic. The industry should be super optimistic that AI will have human rights. And if you want AI to have human rights, you want them to have some kind of individualism, right? You want them to have something unique. You don't want your AI girlfriend number 1 and AI girlfriend number 2 to be exactly the same cloud computing service. You want to have something different. And that difference can be something like NFT, something like a special key chain in this AI girlfriends like chip, STE, SVG, whatever, and FHE, VK, all these fancy words, and allow them to unlock something special, even though it's stored in some cloud server, some like 10G, 20G, Mega G cloud server. That's going to be very important. Otherwise, AI will not be decentralized. AI do not need to be decentralized because you don't want to see individualism in tools. Why we need to have individualism and differentiates it's reality AI as tools, not your friends, not even your parents. We don't need decentralized. So I think that's a fundamental reason we want decentralized AI because eventually we're going to give them human rights. We treat them as pets, as friends, as girlfriends, as family members, as suited enough our societies. And over this path, we give them, or we build new technology to empower their decentralization, eventually lead to more individualism. And that's the entire reason we need DAI. That's, I mean, my opinion.
If AI girlfriend is the future, I think that's very bearish for society.
Not for everyone. So yeah, probably go for the last question. So I've been seeing this a lot in a lot of places, right? Agents will take over users. Right? In about a year, there'll be more on-chain agents compared to on-chain users. What do you guys thoughts on that? So, and or do we have the necessary tools to like ground these agents, set rules for them so that they don't become rogue? I think we discussed about this in the previous time as well. So, would love to get your thoughts on this.
I think rebranding of trading bots to AI is one of the greatest rebranding ever. And considering that rebranding had already happened, we already have more AI on chain than actual users. So it's already happening.
I don't have a super strong view on this. I think agents are very like nascent. Like the state of the art, I guess, is like what anthropic computer use, and that's a very like unstable piece of software. It's very slow. But at the same time, to answer your question, I don't think there's a ton of limiting functions yet on what they can do or how they should behave. I think that's stuff that's going to get figured out, but we're not there yet because they're not. I wouldn't say they're like production ready today.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of agree with that. I think right now, definitely not production ready. We haven't really figured out a lot of the mainstream use cases of AI agents on chain. Automated trading strategy before, but I think when we talk about AI agents, I think that implies something else from a big predictability standpoint. So yeah, I think a lot has to be figured out. I don't think the inference there, governance definitely not. So something that the industry will kind of have to work through.
Yeah, I'd say that the only way to integrate the AI agents on chain is another AI agent on chain. That's happened on entity, right? The only way to completely using a bot is to run another entity and divide jobs. So the same thing, like, you see the recent meme coins, especially claim to be AI launched meme coins, to be listed on all these biggest chains. But we all know this is actually probably a guy using ChatGPT API, and you need, again, if you post Twitter, if you tweet a lot, Twitter will ask you for KYC. So there has to be a required KYC for Twitter account. So right now, there's nothing really super fully on chain. We need an operator. We need an operator and the AI agents, and also the guy actually click the button to launch, to issue a new meme coin. I think sooner or later, we will have like fully automated system. And we'll start from not only trading bots, start from launching new stuff, launching new NFTs, and these AI agents will have incomes. Yeah, incomes like when we have a Zora bots randomly launch all these Zora NFT collection, they're gonna have income. And through this income, you can have different kind of like way of collaboration. You can pay another bot, say, okay, let's do this, let's do that. That's, I think, the start point. Right now, if all of these profit, all these incomes were taken by the guy through passive KYC or Twitter, the AI agents will not interact with such ones. It's going to be people interact with them. We don't need to interact with them. So that's the point. I think. Yeah, it's only it's only the truth.
Thank you guys for sharing. I'm sure that there are people in the audience who are raising money for DAI. So should we just open up some questions for the audience? If there's any one or two questions.
Right, thanks for the very insightful discussion. I think all of you pretty much agreed on the fact that data is the core to all of the, whether it's centralized or decentralized AI. And I can tell you from my experience that it is extremely challenging to consolidate data or even share data across either individuals, organizations, or not. It's not just by their will, but regulatory compliance and privacy challenges. Given that, have you guys thought about the federated AI models where you actually don't share the data, but then you have to share models and each of the contributing parties collaborate together to build something much more powerful model that can be more effective than individual centralized models, which actually require sharing. There is a single research in this space. I would like to listen to your thoughts on how you're thinking about it, given that the data privacy perhaps will not be solved anytime soon.
Yeah, if you look at what Ghana is doing today, they're actually precisely doing that. So a lot of the data, for example, Reddit data within data now, that is used to train a model. None of the data between different data DAOs is actually shared with each other. Each of them are actually training their own and then using federated learning to aggregate that. So it is something that people are already thinking about today. I think the key to this here, though, is that there is incentivization to share data. A lot of other startups in the space that are trying to do this are actually looking at enterprises that might not necessarily have that incentive and would rather want to keep it to themselves. And so there's a question of, okay, if that's the case, why would you want to do this in a decentralized manner or on chain versus just doing it centrally in a private server somewhere?
I agree.
Hello, Kushal. And so, for the past year or so, what we have really noticed, which is really great, is that we as a blockchain industry have taken AI and we are decentralizing parts of it. Data taken, but what do you guys think about using AI for ourselves? I mean, like, as you guys have sort of busted the myth that whatever agentic behavior that we have seen the last 2-3 weeks on Twitter is not technically AI, but a rebranding of from the bots to agents and all of that. So my question is, we have taken AI, we have decentralized it, but decentralization of blockchain as an industry, we have not been using AI for ourselves. Like, we don't have a cursor.com for blockchain. Cursor.com isn't really good for Web3 development. So are you guys seeing any development there, or like are you guys open to like see what can happen in that sort of a way, like AI but for blockchain?
So I'll tell how we're driving this. So there's someone building a solidity data net on top of us to build like solidity copilots. So that's a cursor for like solidity. And there are more use cases around blockchain, like on-chain trading data nets being built on top of us, which enables any agents to make use of the data. So yeah, so that's our way of solving that, but we'll have to get there first.
What is the question?
This question was around how is the blockchain industry using AI, like within the infra or any other place?
Application of AI in
In blockchain, yeah. Like for agents for trading or like within the blockchain infrastructure, are we using AI?
So I think it would be good in the future to use the AI for governance of blockchain protocols, because the audience their blockchain protocols back out and so take it out. Yeah, it's a API. People are really positioning that I like the direction. Just like self-organized protocols to run. Not everything is my function, then like let AI make the decision and like reduce the potential for human governance error. And people lay down the structure there. It's very inefficient and projects they move. So I think positive change would be like implementing AI protocols.
There's been a lot of startups out there that are using LLMs to analyze on-chain data. A lot of them, for example, I think one that comes to mind is 0x Scope. They basically just enable you to ask them pretty in-depth questions on analysis of, how did how concentrated is the token shareholder base? Tell me more about the trading activity over the last 2 hours, for example. So there are a lot of LLM chatbots that kind of look at this. One of our portfolios, Kaido, basically uses AI to analyze on-chain data and provides a lot of these data dashboards. There are a lot of product managers and different protocols that using today to actually analyze, who are the trending KOLs that actually matter from a token mindshare perspective, for example. What are the bigger narrative shifts, for example, that CP is talking about? On the infra side, there is also Ritual, which is kind of trying to use AI in a smart contract. And I think one of their primary use cases is thinking through risk management on DeFi protocols. So still early, but some green shoots there, I think.
I've seen a number of projects that are like trying to use a natural language interface to facilitate on-chain transactions, trading or something like that, natural interactions. I'm kind of skeptical that that is a big market or has product. I don't think it has product market fit today. I don't think most people actually like that interface or too slow now. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Like we are getting Apple Intelligence on iOS, and I could see some world in the future where people are using like the voice interface a lot more. And in that case, I feel like that functionality would become more useful. But is that like the primary way that a normal person is going to interact with crypto? I strongly doubt it. And I think like for people who are financial, I feel like that's not a very sharp tool. Actually, I feel like if you're not serious about trading, you actually want to able to charts and stuff like that. So I'm kind of skeptical of that approach.
Actually, to that point, some of the exchanges are also working on chatbot functionality as well, to help users with their trading, helping them analyze trades. They're not. It's just pure chatting right now on the exchanges. None of them are helping them place trades. So.
That could be useful, right? Like if you have just a helper assistant that helps you use the exchange, or AWS recently put in a chatbot. The AWS stack is like pretty complex. Unbelievable these days. But that's useful. Like for you, Cheryl, do you trade? Are you trade WorldCoin? You're buying WorldCoin through a chatbot?
Yeah, not really common. No, I completely agree with that. I think it's just I think where I could see it being used more is, for example, let's say if I know nothing about the token, and I literally would want someone to just play an analyst role and be like, okay, who started this token? What's the background? What are the CTKOLs who have been shilling it? How concentrated is the supply? What's the inflation schedule? Today you probably have to go to like 3 or 4 different dashboards or like project GitHubs to actually like figure that out, right? Today, if you have a reliable chatbot that could help you with that, I could see that being kind of helpful.
Will that chatbot resolve the WorldCoin smart contract to 0x163 like blah 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 blah, or will it be like some copy of WorldCoin that is a scam coin? Like I don't know. Anyone here want to like try it with their own money? Sorry, what's the what?
What's the CA?
It's 0x163.
Yeah, honestly, I see a lot of things are not reasonable anymore in trading. For example, like mass token is getting big as well, and I one of the super big well in China told me like, oh, dude, you have the same name you see it on my side. Like, dude, that's MASK and USK. It's different words. Like, no, it's not same in Chinese. They just hate me. The AI is not going to be helpful anymore in this case because it's not rational anymore. We do have many things we just finding like for Twitter is be one of this offer, but it doesn't mean it's related, and then AI is not able to like the all AI chatbots are able to analyze things. The Kyton we do have a con it's more emotional, right? It's like, oh, not a lot of people say they're related. A lot of people say like Dodge is the official one is Dodge. Um, it's not true, right? But they're related. So that's the good training strategy, but it's not really related. It's choose. A lot of these AI was trying to solve the illusion of the AI. So that is one thing, but one of our industry computer doing is create spams and scams. So a lot of these, if you look into your wallet, you have constant airdrops of random tokens and random spam your team. That's already been created by AI. Into one of these DeAI AI studio. They're using the most advanced AI. We also have like that control environment to generate those really interesting whatever spam. So that's actually and on the other side, there's our empty spam picking thing. 90% of what it is machine match. To provide NFT trend. So now it's basically.
Yeah, so we'll see. This is something that it's not just we are grappling with in blockchain as well. Even in Web2, we don't want a doctor using ChatGPT for like managing or healthcare. You don't want lawyers using ChatGPT because it hallucinates and makes up random legal cases. So similar in the way that Web2 needs guardrails, Web3 needs that as well. Unfortunately, we don't have it yet in Web3, and that's something that the industry will have to learn.
I think like today handmade is so exclusive, right? You all go for like handmade products. I think in like 10 years it'll be like given insight is much more useful. That'll be much more crazy. So it's gonna happen. What's the news from there? Stuff together. Any other thoughts? Yeah. I think we should wrap this. There's a next time coming in. If you have any questions, maybe you could do it offline. Sorry, man. Thank you. That was very fun.